recording. 2 minutes out. I'm going to go live.
Cool.
7 concurrent viewers at this time.
70?
8.
Oh, okay.
7, and then it became 8.
Okay.
I think we count as 1.
Cool. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, hello, everyone.
Going live right away. Or we're live. We're going to start.
1 minute out. Yeah, 1 minute. T-minus 1 minute. So I have here my notes. I have a Varus and then everything else. That's all I have written down.
Oh, okay.
Oh, also Clegane Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think we were likely to forget that, but make a note of it.
Okay,
That's
just
cool.
write that down. Clegane. I don't know how to spell Clegane. Bowl. Don't tell me how I don't care. I don't care. I'm just going to put my pen over that. I don't even, yeah.
I mean, it just sounded out. That one's pretty simple. It's
I feel like there's a silent letter in there somewhere.
well, the E at the end.
John saying the title is The Bells.
See, ooh, we weren't sure. We had 3. We did a little bit of quick research, and it was either The Last War, which we thought was more likely.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did see the Bells on the Game of Thrones wiki.
Or Dracarys.
And the Bells makes sense, obviously, but I thought Dracarys made the most sense.
Well, if it's The Bells.
The Bells makes if that's the official title, it's the official title.
Yeah, I mean,
He's been right before.
yeah.
So.
I mean, he's basically batting 1,000 here. Did we empty this bag of wine? No, but is this bag empty?
Mostly.
Like it's just let's finish this now, so we're not dealing with a bag. We got the full box later. Just squeeze it. Yeah, let's really just get it in there. Yeah, that's where we go. We recommend when watching Game of Thrones just a full bag of wine in a box.
I prefer to call it a skin, a wine skin.
It's not though, right?
I know.
Can I have that?
There
Thank
you
you.
One day, I really want to get like a drink.
Like an animal skin?
No, I don't care about having a skin of wine. That sounds gross to me. But a horn to drink ale out of.
A horn.
Yeah, I want to drink.
You don't want to. Where do you store? How do you put it down?
Well, you would have like a little stand for it. You know, it wouldn't just be a horn, but then you'd take it off a stand when you're at a party. Then everything I drink would go in the horn.
It seems more cool than it is practical, though, right?
That's the whole point of things that are cool.
Well, no, things
most
can be cool
things
and
that
practical.
Most things that are cool are impractical, and they're.
I'm trying to think of a cool.
There's
thing
a lot
that's
of
practical.
things.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
There's
things.
lots. Yeah. Okay, we are 1 minute past 10 o'clock, and I think we should just get into this. There's lots to say. There's just so much to say. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live reaction following this evening's Game of Thrones. We're talking about Season 8, Episode 5, presumably called The Bells.
That's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
That makes the most sense.
You know what? I think I like the title because it's the most tension at any time during this episode is during that moment when the bells aren't ringing.
And this is a tense episode. The first
Yeah.
half is very tense, so that speaks volumes.
Here's what okay. I have a man of two minds.
Okay.
One says this episode in and of itself as a standalone episode is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Right? My other half of me says fuck.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense? Kind of.
Not
The
really.
second in the sense that like
Maybe expand on that.
I
a little
feel
bit.
like so much happens in this episode, and we expected like all these things to happen over a longer period of time, and it's all condensed down into like several minutes. And then there's like a lot of time of like just destruction for the sake of like watching things just be
Sure,
destroyed. Like
sure.
it's like a 2001 or whatever that movie is, you know?
2012, maybe.
Yeah, whatever. 2001, 2012.
That one's a space odyssey.
Right.
Completely
Yeah,
different story.
yeah. It's just a disaster movie for like half the episode, but the other parts are good.
I thought
Right?
no, I thought overall it was a very strong episode, especially the beginning, of course, the character work that they did early on. I understand why it is a complete just slaughter, just a mess. And that's to show, like, to really dive in. Like, there's some gratuitous violence. There's a lot of scenes of children dying.
yeah.
The point, the period where the soldiers are getting hacked apart is just insane.
We haven't seen them be that brutal in a long time.
Yeah, but it's eye opening, and it's eye opening for John seeing that. These people have no chance. That they weren't granted any form of mercy, right? This is all going to affect their perspective of Dany next episode, and it sucks that we have to say next episode because I feel like it would be stronger if it was a bit more prolonged. But it's all going to come to a head in next episode. It literally has to.
Okay, so here's let's just there's an elephant in the room here, right? It's pink in color. No, it's white. It's mostly white in color, like her hair. Why do you think she does that?
Okay.
There was one distinct decision that's made in this episode that colors the rest of it.
Of course.
Why does she do it?
Well, and she loses it. She was obviously struggling with that decision. She has struggled with it this whole season and last season. I think they've done a decent job laying the groundwork for that. Nobody wants to see their hero fall like this, but Daenerys has been struggling with the concept that she could, if she wanted to, just fly to King's Landing and wreck shop and get what she wants. And at the end of the day, in terms of future generations, like she says in this episode, it probably is for the best to just get rid of Cersei, like rip off the Band-Aid. It's going to hurt initially, but it's going to be better in the long run. That's not how Band-Aids work.
Also, yeah, and also, it's not. And also, like, that's a nice thing to say. It's a cool thing to say, but you can't guarantee how things are going to go in the future. You can only control what you can control.
100%. And of course, it's an evil act. I'm not defending her decision. I'm just saying I think they did a good job explaining why she got to that point.
I don't fully agree with that. I think they do an okay job of it's fine. It's not like I don't feel like, oh, I can't wait, or like waiting for that shoe to drop. To me, the tension comes from not knowing whether that's going to happen or not, right? And having it happen, I don't feel like is as satisfying, because if you understand, like, think about this, Dan. We've been following her for how many years? 8 years?
Yeah,
9, 10, almost like 10 years. It's basically been 10 years, give or take, with like this gaps in between.
Sure.
We've been following this person for, let's just call it 10 years, who's been the hero of the story for basically that entire time. And to do a heel turn at literally the 11th hour.
But it's not a heel turn.
It is, though. You turned your hero into a villain in the second final episode of the entire season. That is the definition of a heel turn.
That was an arc. It wasn't abrupt.
The arc, if to you the arc is a couple mentions of this concept of her having this the potential to do that, referenced once in a while over the entire series, is hardly an arc.
No. The arc isn't about it being mentioned. That's part of it. It's more about how she reacts when she receives different sets of news, and how she struggles with and eventually chooses not to do this, right? Not to raise King's Landing multiple times, having been convinced by people around her.
They never got to King's Landing. This is the first time they've even gotten there.
She's considered it before, and other decisions like this, right? It's just an example of her behavior. So she's faced similar decisions and chosen clemency, and from her perspective, only been punished for it. She lost Missandei. She lost Rhaegal. All these things that she's done, where one of her advisors has held her back, has convinced her to show mercy, didn't pan out. And look. I think this is something, an example of her losing it. It's not like she made a decision and is acting rationally here. I think she just it's a decision made out of emotion.
Why does she wait then? She waits, hears the bells, and then goes. Why?
Because she's in the process of struggling that entire time. She's battling.
Right. And then they ring the bells. They've surrendered.
Yeah.
And she hears them surrender and says, fuck it, I'm killing them all.
Okay, so listen. So what happens there is, on some level, she wanted to do this the entire time, right? And she was using excuses to not do it. The bells rang, and she found out she was disappointed. She realized that she wanted to do that. Again, it's crazy. It's not I'm not defending it, but she realized that's what she wanted. Or maybe it's not even about realizing it. She just acted out emotionally. But on some level, she wanted to do this the entire time, and she was just letting it loose, which she never has before.
And the whole thing is confusing, because it's like we've been led to believe that she has a rational mind. And so she
does.
Right? So so she hears the bells, she loses it, and she just decides to, like, snake her way through the city before she gets to...
Yeah, that part of it is a bit of a quick turn, because it's like Anakin killing younglings. It's like, I get that you're going down this dark path, but that's a steep drop.
It's first of all interesting that you brought up that, because I saw that also referenced in this on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Just like the idea of this like last second turn.
Yeah,
and that moment where Anakin kills younglings is widely regarded to be completely garbage.
And that's what I'm saying. That part where she decides to burn the streets and the innocent people, she didn't need to do that. She could have flown straight to the Red Keep and taken care of Cersei.
Burn the whole thing down.
Right? Which was one of their plans last season. Was one of the things that they were toying around with, and they didn't end up doing. Right?
Instead, she decides to burn the streets. Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah,
what's her justification for that?
I mean, that's just bloodlust. That's just her acting out of spite.
Okay, but what will be her justification for that?
I don't think she's gonna need to justify it. Like
She's gonna. John's gonna fucking
I know.
bring it up to it.
She's
bring it up to
decided
it.
to embrace the fire and blood, to embrace her conqueror side. She's sick of making excuses and having to justify her actions to all these people and being disappointed as a result. So she's just decided to do whatever she wants now, which is why she's going to be regarded as a mad queen and an unfit ruler.
I feel like you're very satisfied by this arc, and I just feel like you are I feel like you might be in the minority on this one.
Well, we'll see it, and that's fine too. But I'm trying to explain why it made sense to me.
No, that's fair. What I'm saying is, from my perspective, and I think also, again, just to frame things up, from the perspective I think most people who watch the show, that this heel turn, and I'm going to keep using that because that is what it is. Mostly unearned. It is partially earned. It's like almost enough to earn it, but not quite.
Sure.
You know?
And I can appreciate that. It's not perfect, but I think they at least tried to lay the groundwork there. So it's not completely out of left field.
I love this though, so Jason Telford says in the chat room, also like Star Wars, the Iron Fleet turned into stormtroopers. Kind of, I think, like the Dothraki and like the Unsullied. The Unsullied turn into stormtroopers. We're following the Unsullied like they're the clones the entire time, right? And then the clones turn out to be what becomes the stormtroopers, right? And we don't like to talk about like the next time on stuff very often, but like that next time on scene shows the Dothraki and the Unsullied basically cheering when as democracy falls. If we can keep using Star Wars references,
I mean, it's unclear. The scenes from next week, it's hard to really glean too much information out of it. It was a couple quick cuts. It did look like they were rounding up survivors for whatever purpose, and it did feel very much like a sort of iron grip, tyrant more than a ruler.
Right. Also, Jason's clarifying that they turned out, what he meant by that is that they couldn't hit anything, which is very funny. But I think I liked my version of the analogy better. No offense, Jason.
Well, she just realized that the dragon can fly around and they can't pivot quick enough.
Right. Well, and there's some I think there's some ingenious like strategizing or using the sun and the clouds to her advantage.
Yes.
All that stuff that totally works. Awesome. And if you come in from the side of the fleet, they're undefended, basically from that side, or at least less defended, and it works. It works for her. She destroys all the scorpions, waits for the bells to ring, and then kills everyone. Like that's really the sequence of events, right?
Yeah.
I guess we can back up a bit. We can backpedal and say, hey, what do you make of the Varys thing?
Well, again, that was built up last season. I think we mentioned it on the podcast. He promised that he would look her in the eyes and tell her the truth if he thought that she was making a mistake, and he did. And she promised that she would burn him alive if he ever betrayed her, and he did. He did it for the right reasons, but he still did. I was surprised that Tyrion was the one to rat him out, essentially.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not. He makes it clear that that's not when Varys says, when Tyrion says, well, what happens to her, and he doesn't answer. There's an unspoken agreement here. What's going to happen? Varys in this episode is trying to poison her, right? When that girl comes to the chambers and she's not eating, it's because they're trying to poison her, right? And Tyrion knows that. Dany has a inkling that that's happening, which is why she's not eating. And then Tyrion is invested. He's basically gone so far down one path that he there's no coming back from that. So he has to be double down on the choice to say, hey, you've been betrayed by Varys. It is a risky move because he knows, because that information did come from him.
Right.
He didn't necessarily have to reveal that information. He did, she infers it, but she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean the Varys thing is, to me, is earned. And Liz is saying here in the chat room, regardless of whether or not it was earned, referencing the Dany decision, it was a bad narrative choice. And so I disagree with that to some degree, because if it is earned, if it's built, if they do the work, if the show does the work to decide this is the way they're going to go, and they're going to put in the legwork, and it happens, even if you don't like it, it's not a bad choice. At least
I think what she means by that is for Dany's character arc, it's very dissatisfying, 100%.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't think I wouldn't agree with that if they had done the work. I just don't think they did enough of the work.
Sure.
Right? Because having Ned die is not satisfying, right? But they do the work, and it's like, well, it makes sense, and it sucks, but we're gonna move on. There's other things that can happen. This is 11th hour. We're going to take our hero of the story, and we're gonna change it, and like that, like Anakin. If we're gonna keep doing the Star Wars thing,
You don't have to, but
well, okay, so
it is a good example.
it is a good example. It's a
analogy.
really good analogy because they do the same thing in that movie, even though in that movie, you know where it's ending. You know where it's going.
Yeah. And
right?
They had 3 movies to build it up.
And they still don't do a very good job, right? So they do it. They make the decision. Then they try to retcon a lot of that with Clone Wars. They try to tease a lot of that stuff. It doesn't matter. The point is, in the movie they made that choice they made in Episode 3 doesn't work because they didn't do the work. But we know that Vader redeems himself. There's no redemption arc for Dany. She's just damned herself. That's it. It's over.
Yeah, she became a victim of the thing that she was trying to destroy. I do think, again, I can see how you might think it's unearned and how it certainly feels rushed. Again, that's more a symptom of the way the last couple seasons have been filmed and shot or produced. They've chosen to do shorter seasons, longer episodes, and it's going to feel rushed. It's just that the nature of having so few episodes. I don't know. It does suck to see this happen to Dany, but it does make sense because she was more obsessed with the throne and the concept of ruling than about bettering the lives of people.
I think that's a great idea. I just don't think the show did enough work to establish that.
You said that. Yeah,
right.
We're good.
So, but if all those things you're saying are true, except they didn't do the work, you know what I mean? Like, so I agree with you in concept. All right, let's see. Let's touch on a couple things. Someone asked here, was I supposed to put Marcos? Was I supposed to put anything together with Arya and the horse scene at the end?
I don't know. That was one of the sort of, I wouldn't say errors, but like one of the more convenient aspects of the show is this Arya. For the third time, it cuts, it fades to black or fades to white because of the ashes, and Arya is, recovering from almost having died amidst the battle, and you think it's over, and then it's not, and that's the third time, as she just, stumbles around, and then there's a white horse with the sun shining on it down an alleyway.
It's very,
like, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't think there's a larger meaning. She just gets lucky.
I don't she could have left. Like the thing was over. Like whether there's a horse there or not, she would have just walked away. Yeah, like, doesn't matter.
I don't think the horse is it's not like it was someone significant's horse that, it's a lucky thing that person was there to get the
Was
horse
it the horse that, what's his name was riding from the Golden Company?
Strickland, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It doesn't really, but again, like, we don't know Strickland. Like, it doesn't matter to us. Like, the whole Golden Company thing, we can all agree was a waste of time.
No, it wasn't a waste of time because they needed to have an opposing force, and the Lannister army was depleted.
I think you're right about it. Okay, you're right, because it's not a waste of time because they basically spent no time, right? So it's like it just filled that void that they needed of a blank army to stand in front of the walls, right? That's all they needed. It did that job. Done, right? But okay, I don't know. I feel like I like how the episode is executed.
Yeah,
but okay, let's talk about the things I like. The Clegane Bowl, very satisfying to me. Really like that.
Yep.
I think every moment of that Clegane Bowl is earned and exhilarating, and it cuts between that and I think Jaime and Cersei.
It also cuts to Arya being sort of trampled and then saved by that mother.
So it's like the tension is very high.
Absolutely.
Right? You can make the argument that that's like how zombified the mountain is like almost is like a bit much. Like when he gets stabbed through the head and like tries to pull it out, like that seems a bit much, But it all works because it ends in that final moment of them falling, presumably. Although if if a knife through the head doesn't kill the mountain, how does
fire? The whole point is that fire is sort of the great purifier, right?
Right.
It can end anything, and it's kind of sad. It's great that Sandor got his revenge. That's a very poetic ending. We've been saying it forever that they're going to die together, like Eric and Eric from the books. But for the Hound to die by fire is kind of disappointing because that was like his big thing.
Don't you find that maybe it's like overcoming that,
Yeah, like it would be if he knew that there was fire and like chose to dive into it anyways. Then he would be, but he threw himself and the mountain through a wall, and then there was fire on the other end.
Yeah, I think he had probably a good idea though, right?
Well, there's fire everywhere, but
Yeah.
like it's not quite the same. I get where you're going with that though.
Like I feel like it's like a very like nitpicky thing to say. Oh well, if you knew there was fire there, it's much more satisfying. It's like there's a wall in the way, like, but he knew. Right?
No,
like,
I'm saying if there was a fire and he chose to dive into it with the mountain, that would be him overcoming
like a
specifically
bonfire?
the fear of
Right.
fire. Oh, well, there's fires everywhere.
that's what I'm saying. There's fires everywhere.
He's still sacrificing himself, and like it's still a great moment.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just quickly touch in on our death pool here.
Oh, I forgot about that. Get to make a couple.
Exactly. Some significant ones. Okay. So John's still alive. Sansa, untouched. Arya, I have dead here, but still alive.
She's still there, still kicking it. She came close a couple times.
Yeah. Cersei, dead. By Jaime, I had written here.
Well, no partial points for that. It's just they're both dead.
No, I don't lose any partial points for that. That being said, I think, what do you make of Jaime's arc here as overall?
This is very interesting, and our friends that were here earlier, Rochelle was very upset about it because Jaime, they really were. There was a redemption story for him, and I think you know what? It's not the most satisfying way for Cersei to die. She doesn't, nobody looks her in the eyes and condemns her and all that kind of stuff. I think for Jaime, it's not the most satisfying arc, but it makes sense for his character. I'm okay with it.
I also am okay with Jaime's death. I think it is, for me, very satisfying, and I think fits everything that's been told to us about his character the entire time. It absolutely fits.
He's regressed a million times. And the thing is, we're all sort of expecting now that the show is, in its last couple episodes, that these things are going to be tied up nicely. And, if there's anything that the show has done is it's taught us to not expect those things, right?
I would say that Cersei, if we're talking about, because she's next on the list here, or I guess Jaime's next on the list, whatever. Cersei, Jaime, doesn't matter. We're talking about the two people.
Same thing.
That Cersei's death is a bit weak. Because not just because someone doesn't get to look her in the eye, it's because she's like crying and begging to not die at that moment. Which
it's a very human moment, and she has the baby, and you can see that she's unraveled. She's saying, "I don't want my baby to die. I don't want to die. Not like this." She's just scared. You never see Cersei like that before because she only lets loose like that in front of Jaime.
Right,
She only opens up in front of him.
You could make the argument. I'm not going to make it. I'm saying someone could make the argument.
Someone somewhere someday could possibly
can make the argument that her doing that is justification for what Tyrion's been saying this whole fucking season about how he keeps doubling down on this idea that he lets Jaime go. Tyrion's not going to survive that, by the way. I'm sorry.
I don't know, man.
He lets Jaime go, and with the intention of saving her, of like save her life. It's over. Take her away. Go sail to Essos and start a new life.
Yeah.
Right? Because he knows that she cares about her baby, which he's been saying for like a whole season and a half, and has basically been a mistake after mistake. Baiting on that has been a mistake several times for him.
The thing is, he's not technically wrong, but yes, it has been a mistake, and Cersei's made him pay for it. And Daenerys comments on it that, he's made a series of mistakes. His next one will be his last, and he does let Jaime go.
Right.
So we know that Daenerys is going to want to execute him. I think next episode we're going to see a third and final trial for Tyrion. Just to have some symmetry, things come in threes.
She doesn't seem like the type of person who does trials.
Well, maybe not at this point, right? Because she's become this thing. But because there's other people involved, we might see that. I don't know. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. In terms of Cersei, I don't know. You like, I wanted to see her eaten by a dragon, of course, but like that's.
Oh, it's not even just like, I don't care about the dragon. I don't care about like. So there's a shot from the trailer that is we could say an Avengers Endgame style like mislead, because that doesn't appear in this it doesn't appear in the show.
Her with the wine.
Her and the wine on the throne doesn't appear in the show. And it's more than, and I find, okay, yeah, her dying with Jaime is great. Her not having to face any of the consequences of her decisions sucks. But I can survive that. I can like buy it if
you're gonna find the tools to survive.
If next episode is able to pay off Dany's lack of
Yeah.
of decision.
And that's going
right?
to be a huge challenge for next episode to make that satisfying, because all your complaints about Danny's arc and how it felt, like a heel turn and rush and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, and how there was some groundwork laid but not enough, blah blah blah. Next episode has to make sure they put enough work in to make it pay off, right? So that'll be interesting. In terms of Cersei and her children, I think she has, again, not defending her character, but she's suffered a lot.
How do you feel about the fact that your Valonqar thing is?
Well, it's like Azor Ahai, it's another one of these prophecies that just doesn't feature in the show.
Right.
She wasn't killed. She wasn't betrayed by a younger brother, technically. I mean, I guess you could argue that Jaime betrayed her by leaving, but that's pretty weak.
Yeah.
So she wasn't choked by her younger brother. I guess the idea is that whole prophecy, because she's aware of it, it's what leads her down a darker path and what sort of seals her fate. So it's more metaphorical than anything else. But still.
Jason here says, I would have put money on Jaime killing Cersei in reaction to or protecting Tyrion in some way.
Yeah.
I really thought that Jaime's arc would end with him killing Cersei. We talked this a long time. And then that would be his own demise, that they would die together.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that actually works in a fairly symmetrical way with the Hound and the Mountain dying together in the same way. I think it works. Any more than two is too much.
Yeah.
But the
thing is, we were kind of like, a lot of us, not all of it, not everybody, but a lot of us thought that Jaime would be killing her similar to how he killed Aerys to protect King's Landing.
Right. I think though, I'm actually it makes more sense that he wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
That I think. And there's another reality out there where there's a scene in this episode or any other episode of Game of Thrones where he has the option and the ability to stop Cersei from doing something terrible and can't do it, and that terrible thing still happens.
And you could argue that he's done that his whole life.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, not all of us overcome our demons.
He mostly does. Right?
He tries real hard, and then he falters at the finish line. It happens. He's a flawed character. That's always been Jaime's thing. He had a heroic arc, sure. He had moments, but he was never a purely heroic character.
No, I get, and that's why we expected him to die with that final, again, with a Darth Vader-esque.
If throwing her down.
Right, the electric chute or whatever that is. If we can keep using Star Wars references, which I will continue to do for as long as I live.
You love that, but.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, let's keep going down this list here.
All right, what else we got? So we got, again, obviously, Jaime and Cersei are both dead, crushed by rocks. Tyrion's still alive. Dany still alive. Jorah dead. Varys dead.
That's a new check.
Grey Worm alive still. Okay. Missandei dead. Euron dead.
I didn't like that, by the way.
He just emerges from the water like fucking Aquaman.
Yeah, that's one. Okay, so I said the horse earlier, and this is another example of it being just a convenient.
I laughed out loud.
Yeah, he just happened to wash up on the shore where Jaime was walking. I know we'll forgive these things because the show's got a lot of things to do, but come on, you knew he wasn't dead when the ship blew up. Yeah, and you wanted he was going to get his. He was going to have his more satisfying death.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it really was. It was just sort of a weird brawl, and he could have killed Jaime a couple times and didn't, and then died.
What is the emotional? You could say, what are the emotional stakes for this fight? It's the two people who are the two males closest to Cersei, I guess.
Yeah,
and
they had a rivalry before. Last season, there was a rivalry there, so it's been built up. But it's not like Jaime didn't overcome anything. He didn't change as a character to have beaten Euron. He just got lucky enough to stab him while he was already stabbed.
Yeah, he was able to reach that one dagger where they were both exhausted, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that.
But also, we all agree that fuck Euron and just get the fuck out of here.
He should have died 1,000 times.
I wish you know what? I would have actually enjoyed if he'd been burnt on his ship when Dany just swoops in, and when he jumps off, I'm like, he didn't die. I said it at that moment, and it turns out he instead gets to mermaid. Turns out maybe not. It wasn't Varys the whole time. It was Euron who was the mermaid. Okay. Yara, who knows? There's so many things on here that are bullshit. There's so many names on here that you added on here that are bullshit. Yeah, you want to go through those ones.
Mira Reed, Howland Reed, Quaith,
Yeah. Okay. Good for you.
Sam Tarley, Gilly, Genji, those people are all still alive.
Yeah. Okay.
Here we
So
go.
can
The
we?
Hound
Can
and
we?
the Mountain
Whoa,
are both dead.
can we agree that Gendry, like as being dead, we can check off as like that's wrong. Like
Yeah.
we're not going to see Gendry again.
Well, no, don't check it off until the show's over.
I don't know.
That's not. That's
All
not
right.
how this
Maybe that's
works.
just a little premature, but yeah. That's yes. Sandor and Gregor are both dead.
Yeah, and I think that was well executed for
Mhm.
the most part, aside from the zombie rules.
I'm just hold on here. I'm just want to. I think our entire, like, what do you have, John? What's your death pool for John?
I have John alive and Danny dead. You're the
I
opposite.
was
of me.
opposite. I think this is just going to come down to this. I think all the points are going to be the same, and it's going to be I was wrong about that prediction and you were right, and that's it. That
It could
we
be.
could have just put those two as the stakes, and because everything else we've been exactly the same so far.
More or less.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
It's
8,
fine, it's
9,
fine.
10 checks.
Well, there's also other people in the death pool. It'll be interesting to compare notes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then underneath that is Qyburn, super dead.
Super dead. Did you expect him to just be like tossed aside like a rag doll? No one did. No one did. So who was it? Hold on, let me find it. John Rock. Who had Qyburn getting head smashed in the death pool?
Yeah.
No one.
Nobody.
No one did. I do kind of like that moment. It works for Qyburn, him trying to like command someone who's not going to listen to him. And
Well,
boom.
it's I mean, like, you know, the analogy that we used when we were first learning of the mountain and Qyburn was the Frankenstein thing, and this is Frankenstein's monster killing Dr. Frankenstein.
yeah,
It works out.
yeah. It's that's totally fine with me. I think
It's not exactly how the book, like how the Frankenstein book works. They do end up both dying, but like it's different.
there's a lot of different variations of that Frankenstein story, but I think the classic one is they both die, right?
Right.
Or one is Frankenstein dies and the monster goes and lives off in like exile somewhere. Either way, it doesn't matter.
in the Arctic, yeah.
Okay. So what else we got on here?
I think that's it for this episode in terms of changes.
Yeah, Brienne, Pod,
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Tormund. Yeah, there's a whole bunch on here that we're not gonna see. Okay, that does. Well, Clegane Bowl. Obviously, we had that listed on our whole thing. Clegane Bowl. I said the Hound, alive, Mountain dead.
Yeah, and I said both dead. I've been saying it for years, and you know what? It feels good to be right about that.
I also have here doesn't happen. I don't remember like what I can't like. I have all three options listed as
true or false or none of the above.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna put an X. I don't think I got this one right. I don't know. That's fine. No. You were wondering if it was gonna happen at all. That was.
I thought yeah, you're right. So at one point I thought it didn't make sense because the emotional stakes were there. Obviously, Zombie Mountain does remember and was very invested in the actual emotion of that battle,
which is the only way that can work.
Yeah. So that wasn't clear before. It does work in this episode. So great.
So we had someone also mention in the pod I said the pod.
In the podcast.
In the podcast.
Someone mentioned in the podcast?
No,
Great.
this is the yeah, one of us. No, in the chat room here, something about how Braun is screwed. Like he hedged his bets, and the only remaining member of that hedge that he made is Tyrion, and he's not really in any place to like demand anything or reward anyone with anything.
Yeah, because the only person that would have rewarded Bronn was Cersei, dead, and he was going to try to kill Jaime and Tyrion. Jaime's dead.
Well, Tyrion would have if he had the option, if he was in position to do it. And he's just not in a position.
But like
to
now,
do
there's no incentive for Bronn to kill Tyrion.
Right. No, I'm saying like Bronn's not going to kill Tyrion, but Bronn's not going to get what he wants.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. John Roxy, no Helen Reed, eh, Dan?
It's coming.
It's
you guys,
coming.
Next episode, just wait.
I saw a very
very
very funny tweet that I thought, which was basically like it was like Helen Reed. Okay, I'm ready. John is really, and then someone's like, they already know. Wait, what? So yeah, Dan, I'm sorry.
It's getting. I'm open to the possibility that he might not be on.
You're open to that with one episode left. You're open to that.
It's just getting down to the wire, and for him to show up next episode because everyone's already like no one has asked for any sort of proof. Everyone's just taking Bran and John's word.
They're taking their word for it.
which you would expect more people to think Bran is some crazy, right? uh, there's no physical proof. I mean, technically, I think Sam has a book somewhere that confirms that they were married.
Yeah.
Doesn't say anything about
He
a
doesn't.
kid.
No, it doesn't say any. No, it doesn't say anything about like. I don't even think it names. It's just like it's a secret marriage of.
But he knew it was Lyanna
Right.
and Rhaegar. So it might confirm that they were married at some point. But even then, there's no
It's like,
no
how
connecting
convenient
Jon
for
to
you.
that, right?
Right.
So Howland is the only physical proof. But it doesn't look like they're going to require that.
It doesn't seem like that's going to matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people do you think Varys got that word out to?
That's hard to say. I think some. So the first shot of this episode where he was writing letters, plural, and the letter that he burned later on when they came with the chains, that was a couple scenes later. So there's a time gap between. So you got to assume that he sent some off.
I don't know if you have to assume that. I also think that shot of him burning the letter and putting it in that, like, closing it in that whatever that like thing is that he closed it in, has significance, and that I think maybe the idea is that he wasn't able to get any news out.
It could go either way on that one, but just because there's a gap of time in between, why wouldn't he have sent it?
I think it doesn't. I don't think it even matters.
'Cause
Like,
at that
I don't
point-
think it even matters. I really think about it. Like, who cares? Who knows?
Send to who?
Yeah.
They did mention that there is a prince in Dorne, but we're not going to see any Dornish or
No.
any of the Lords of the Vale or the Westeros.
Well,
or
maybe.
the
I
Reach.
mean, we'll probably see Sansa. You think we're not going to see Sansa again?
That's
before,
it. The
right?
show is really condensed to Winterfell and King's Landing. Right? It's clear in the opening
Right, but
credits.
what I'm saying is like the Knights of the Vale are they presumably not down in the south with Jon?
Yeah, they went with the armies.
Right.
I think we saw. So when Tyrion and Davos arrive at that camp, that's on
Yeah.
the
There's we
shores
saw the right shield. The color. Yeah.
of the Vale variant.
Yeah.
So the Knights of the Vale are there. The Lords of the Vale, whatever. Bronze Jon is still at Winterfell, I think. I don't know why. He might be there with his troops. He wasn't in this episode, obviously, so it could go either way with that. But I think that letter reaching Sansa, she already knows.
It doesn't
about
matter.
Jon.
There's no one he could send that letter to that we would give a shit about.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is he didn't get it out, but it doesn't. But it also doesn't matter.
What about Yara? Won't be in the show ever again.
Maybe he's sending it to the Reeds specifically.
And
They're
they're
like,
just yeah,
cool. We know. We're not coming. We're cool.
Man.
So that's fine. I think either way, I think the way the next episode plays out, if we're just gonna quickly, if we can just predict. If there's anything else we want to touch on before we kind of like look forward.
I mean, it was pretty quick. Obviously, the episode was long. A lot of it was just things blowing up and dragonfire and buildings falling on people and slaughter. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of like details we can go into about that.
I mean, there's like you can reference like it's really the way the sound design they use is very like
Sure.
World War I like inspired with there's like these explosions and like in the distance, which I think is very effective in terms of building tension because you never know when one of those lands on you. You know.
You know what? I think when you reference building tension, I think this episode did a great job building tension in a couple of different scenes. And one of the ones that sticks out the most to me is Tyrion and Dany at the very beginning. That sort of
Right.
back and forth.
And when she says Jon Snow, and he's like, "No, Varys," and then she's like, "Well, ipso facto."
yeah. If A equals C and B equals
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that scene
Quid pro quo, Mr. Powers.
off track. That scene got progressively like the shots got progressively tighter, and then towards the
Holy
end,
shit, they were like so
it was
close.
real tight on both their faces, and that the tension was as high as you
I
could
was thinking
possibly
that too. I was
imagine.
like, could you guys get any closer on these fucking close-ups? Like, they're not even their full faces even in
And
the
look,
frame.
I think that's a great example of some intelligent filmmaking because that creates a very claustrophobic, uneasy feeling, and that's what you want the audience to be feeling at that moment. Is like what's going on? I don't feel comfortable in this space, even though you like both characters. You're not on one side or the other. You're kind of just there,
Yeah.
and uncomfortable, and that's the point.
Imagine if we had like a whole like long couple episodes to deal with that kind of like tension.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been saying that, and probably will keep saying it. It's a moot point, right? We have what we have.
Did we mention that? We haven't mentioned on the show. I'll mention it tomorrow when we record the full podcast. But the idea that I think it was the Ringer, maybe I don't remember what website I read it off of, but that idea that someone wrote a whole piece about why the show feels different at this stage, and basically the one line that really stood out to me was this idea that Game of Thrones might go down in history as television's greatest unforced error, right?
Yeah.
The idea that they didn't have to do this rush job and they chose to do it anyway. And
Yeah, we talk about the show as a whole. We try to stick to the story for the most part. I don't love talking about the stuff that's outside of the show, choices that the showrunners have made.
I love to do that.
I get it. It's that you sort of cross a line when you start talking about somebody's personal life, and I would prefer to stick to the content typically. I do agree that they made a deliberate decision to reduce the show. I don't know why. I don't know what's all of the factors that are going into that decision, but it has, truly affected the content. So it is kind of part of the same conversation now, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, like I'm not saying like, oh, like they got married. I'm like, that doesn't matter. I'm just saying like there's clearly decisions made outside of the world of the show that brought this to a head.
Part of it is, I imagine we're going to be repeating ourselves tomorrow when we record this because this is going to come
every
up.
time.
Yeah, it's probably likely. One of our friends of the show, Max. I don't know if he's in the live chat right now, but Max is one of our friends in Winnipeg. He made a good point when I went to see him recently. They didn't sign up to write Game of Thrones fanfic, and once they got to the point that the show exceeded the books, they weren't given enough information to really continue to write a story that was as fleshed out. I'm not making excuses for them. I do think they made some potentially selfish decisions, but they didn't have enough to go off of, and because there are deviations within the earlier seasons, it has a ripple effect. So one small change creates larger changes down the road. So they were kind of stuck, and they did the best they could theoretically. Again, I'm not defending them. I'm not saying that this
sure
is...
sounds like a defense, right?
Okay, so I am technically defending them. That's like the definition of what I'm doing. I'm not saying I agree with their decisions. I'm not saying that they couldn't have done a better job. I'm just saying that's what factored into their decision.
I just don't agree with that argument at all. I just fundamentally, we don't have enough information to say, oh, they didn't sign up to make fanfic. Sure, but they were also given a lot of information by George R. R. Martin, and we don't also know how much, right?
Exactly.
So you could say, well, they weren't given enough, but we don't know that. We don't know that.
And I'm not making excuses for them. They were given information, and then they had the opportunity to write a story, and it was going to be their story. It still is.
We've also seen them do stuff outside the book that worked just fine. They just chose to accelerate things when they didn't have to. They said from, I don't know, like 4 years ago, like this is like a 78-hour, 75-hour story. And they're like, are you sure? Like, I think we could probably stretch this to like 100 hours and it'd still be pretty good. They're like, no, 75 is good. Yeah. We'll condense it down to make it work.
We did talk about this on the podcast. It was a couple years ago now. And I remember getting to a point where they were in an interview at some point talking about how stressful it is, how much work it is. They're doing 18-hour days. They're flying all over the globe. I can understand that, but at the same time, that's what you signed up for. And if you're not into it anymore, you
pass
can
the
pass
reins.
it on.
I'm just so sick of that. This whole conversation is like, well, it's a lot of hard. It's really hard work. Like, yes, it is. If you don't want to do the work, someone will gladly take over the biggest show in the world. They will gladly do it, and they probably would, if you pick the right person, probably do a pretty good job.
Again, I hate having these conversations about the people involved, because you have to respect the people that are creating the show. 100%. Everybody involved. The cast, the crew. It is a tough job. They're doing amazing work. They're making one of the best shows ever made on TV. Okay. That being said, playing devil's advocate here, given what you said prior to this, yes, they could pass it on to somebody else, but then the show changes, and they do have some sort of authorship over the show. It is their show. It started as their show. They want to see it into the finish. The thing is, you can't have both of those things. You
can want to be like, well, I want authorship. Like, cool, great, then finish it. But like, well, we also want to rush it. Well, then no, you don't get like. Well, you can't have both. You can't have.
Guess what? They are getting.
I'm
both
saying
things.
I get that, but ultimately that created a lesser product, right? And if you wanted to,
we can all agree on that.
If you didn't want to do that, you didn't want to make a lesser product, and you didn't want to give up control. Like, those are not compatible. Those two things can't work. So their option was to hand off the reins, and they couldn't do it. And I think it's kind of a selfish decision.
Yeah. Again, we're doing that with limited. We're saying that with limited information. On the surface, it definitely looks that way. Again, I mean no disrespect to anybody involved in this show. You can't.
We can only make these judgment calls based on the information we have, and we have a decent amount of information. But when someone says, "Well, they didn't sign up to make fan fiction," we don't have in that case we don't have enough information to make that call, right? I think someone in the chat room said something about Jason Telford said in an interview. D&D said they never expected it in the beginning they would ever pass the books, but they got to a point in like season when they found out they knew they were going to surpass them, and they said, okay, we'll keep going, we're going to do it.
Well, you have to keep going.
Right, exactly. That's fine, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But you have to understand that, like, if you're going to make that decision, go all the way. It's not a half. You can't just do partial.
Again,
it doesn't make sense to me.
I get what you're saying, and I'm playing mostly devil's advocate here. But they do have to deal with just a million fans like us that are questioning their decisions at every turn. No one's ever going to agree with everything. You want to create a product, create a show that is your own, but you still want to do something that the fans enjoy. Like,
right.
There's a lot of little nuances to it.
You're right. Ultimately, I think at this point, you have a larger portion of the fan base saying, oh, man, you guys are fucking up. Like a very large portion
I think
of it.
Majority of the fans, you and I can disagree about Daenerys' arc and whether or not that was earned. But I think the bottom line for a lot of these things,
people
is
don't like it.
The reason they don't feel earned is because the show was rushed, because they made that arbitrary decision.
Right, because you could have spent a whole season building up the idea that she's losing her mind, or these series of dominoes causing her to lose more and more faith in her people. Like, instead of doing it over 2 episodes, they could have done that over a whole season.
Right.
And guess how much more effective that exact same moment, because the moments don't have to change, right? The things that happen don't have to change. It's the specifics of how it gets there.
Yeah, and we agree on that. And I think that's been made clear on our podcast and probably a million others.
Okay, well, let's see here. Someone mentioned earlier that I think Davos, Davos probably isn't going to see any repercussions for him helping Tyrion. No one's going to know that he helped Tyrion, so it's probably not going to matter.
Yeah, he wasn't there to smuggle anybody, so he just listened. I don't know.
Like, do you think there was a boat there? Do you think there even was a boat there?
I think that was the plan. Obviously, they had to improvise.
Right.
Again, I'm personally assuming that there's going to be a trial next episode. Just because he's had to give him a
keep
third.
hoping for trials. You thought there was being a trial for Jaime. There wasn't really a trial for Jaime either.
A lot of there was a lot of it happened off screen. We just saw like sort of the end.
I guess.
I just in terms of symmetry, it makes sense to me.
What happens next episode?
Obviously, the major conflict, the major dilemma is what to do with Dany, and that's going to be from the Stark side. So it's going to be Arya, Sansa, and probably
Sansa's not going to be involved.
You don't think Sansa's going to be involved?
I don't think she's going to be involved directly in the same way that's Arya and Jon are.
She's not going to teleport to King's Landing. But
exactly.
You know what?
Well, maybe.
There's been a ton of teleporting lately. Ravens can also teleport, so Sansa's certainly going to be involved in next episode. What else is she?
Well, she should be there. I just don't. She's going to be involved in that decision. I fully expect that it'll be a wholly Jon decision to make, and really, it should be a wholly Jon decision to make. The show has set us up to the point where he gets to decide her fate, not anyone else.
Right. Fair enough. It does come down to Jon and Dany, Ice and Fire, all that kind of stuff. I think, regardless of how effective the build-up was, the idea of having us with 2 main characters that have both been heroes the entire time we've known them against one another, and like as much as what Dany did today was monstrous, there are going to be people that are on her side.
Well, yeah, her Dothraki and her Unsullied. That's it.
No, I mean like fan. I'm talking like from the fan perspective. There are people that are still going to be conflicted about what happens next episode.
Okay, so does that make sense to you? Because the show is clearly setting her up as a villain. It's clear, like they're showing her murdering innocent people, right? So if you're one of those people that's like, yeah, go Dany, rethink that decision. I would say.
You don't get to tell people what to think.
I get to tell. Yes. If I'm telling them to not condone the death of innocent people, yes, I get to tell them that. I get to.
Okay.
Yeah, you get to too. Yeah. That was one of those things where, like, yeah, that's not an okay thing to think. You should probably consider rethinking that.
There's levels to it, but yeah, you're largely right.
But like, if their argument is ends justify the means, like. That's been proven over and over again that's just not how it works. It just doesn't work that way. In reality, like in real world. In the
100% agreed. And I thought that was interesting in this episode, her saying that, future generations will thank us sort of thing. is very similar to what Jamie was saying. This is probably back in like season 5 or maybe 6, probably 5. Whenever he returned to King's Landing, when he was, oh no, it would have been 6. So when
season 6, yeah.
when he was justifying to Olenna Tyrell why he was following Cersei, and she listed off a million bad things that Cersei had done, and he's like, yeah, you're right. But once she's done, once the smoke is cleared, and people start having babies again, there will be peace because of her actions. And Dany has the same perspective.
So,
again, ends justify the means. It's
no,
not just. It's
the
not.
thing is, though, it's a nice thing to say, but this is like the whole like you create your own villains, like you're your own worst hit because you did it. You got the throne.
Well,
Congratulations. There's no other armies to defeat you. You've got it. But you've also murdered countless people's parents and children.
Sure.
You really haven't done any. You haven't really created any peace in reality because it's all going to come back to you eventually. And guess what? Even if your entire lifespan exists of you maintaining peace, the moment you die, that whole argument's out the window, right? You can't guarantee anything once you're dead. So,
I
know.
I feel like I'm not saying it was the right decision, and I'm not defending that philosophy. I was just mentioning that it was cyclical because it was mentioned in 2 seasons.
I'm just trying to bring common sense to the table here. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. I think if we're gonna wrap it up here. We got about 10 minutes ish, give or take, that we want to spend on this. And next episode is gonna end with the show is set up. Arya will kill Dany. It's just like,
yeah, it certainly wants us to believe that.
She begins this episode with "I'm gonna go kill Cersei." Is told by the Hound to not do it because revenge will. I mean, I guess you can make that argument that if she does that, it's just like the same thing. It's just like she's committing the revenge thing.
Revenge would consume her.
Right.
It's different though, because with Dany, it's not about what happened to her personally. It's about what happened to everybody else.
Right. So
I think Arya's going to be on a mission to kill Dany. Whether or not she succeeds, questionable.
There's still the whole question of Drogon, right?
Yeah, it's still a dragon.
There's still WMD in there.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, whatever. We can't really speculate too much about the next episode.
I mean, we can.
We can end this pretty soon, I think. We've already have. We've said what we need to say. Drogon, look, listen. I don't think Dany's gonna win and sit the Iron Throne.
No,
right?
You can't. The show can't. It actually can't end that way. Like if it does, it's like, well, guys, I think you certainly made a choice. But no.
And look, I mean, listen, as far as HBO shows go, they make some interesting choices, and it's not always a happy ending.
Sopranos.
It's not like, because the lesson is, it's not that, the good guys succeed, the good guys, if you prevail, as long as you stick to your morals, you'll win the larger victory. You might win a moral victory, but often they don't. And so Dany became what she hated, right? The hero of today, the hero of yesterday becomes the tyrant of tomorrow unless they crucify themselves today.
Or perhaps, if we can reference something much more modern, we could reference The Dark Knight and say, what's the line?
Yeah. If you live long enough, you see yourself become the villain.
It's the same line. It's the same idea. It's exactly the same.
You either
idea.
die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Right.
The quote, my initial quote was from Joseph Campbell, but
yeah,
Dark Knight works too.
I mean, more relevant, I guess.
I don't like
it means exactly the same thing.
Like that you
more
said
people
that.
know that one. If the meaning is the same, it's like, we're all good. It's not as elegant a quote. Is that the problem, Dan?
Well, let's move on.
Right.
We can argue that.
Okay, hold on. Let's quickly answer some questions from the chat room. Jason's saying, I can't see that Arya killing Dany after the Night King. That's too much. But
no. Everyone said the same thing about her killing Cersei. Like, it can't be that Arya is just the most badass.
Well, I'm not saying she's going to. I'm not saying she's going to surprise anyone by killing Dany, but she might be the one to do the execution. Yeah, she did that with Littlefinger.
Yeah, you just can't give Arya every kill. It's just.
But it's a symbolic thing. It doesn't really matter, right? Like who physically does it at the end of the day isn't.
Well, it does matter because if there is a trial on that side, Jon.
It's the whole sentencing the sword thing.
100%. So as much as he would hate to do it, he would have to. Much like, again, season 2 is probably the best season to watch. Not only do we have Jamie being released in season 2 in a very similar fashion,
From
John refusing to execute Egret will be the opposite of what happens if John has to execute Danny.
Season 2, get everyone. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
We're just
heard
saying.
it here
We're
first.
just saying. Okay, what else have we got in here? We got another couple minutes left. Will Bran play a role next episode?
We've talked about how he's sort of sidelined for obvious reasons. I think he kind of. What role could he possibly play next episode? Right, like his powers.
Someone says he'll warg Drogon. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, I think for a long time everybody assumed that he would, or not assumed. Everyone wanted him to warg into one of the dragons, which makes sense. He can reach out. He can warg into crows. He can warg into his direwolf and people. Right. So the thing is, they've really essentially like relegated Bran to a secondary role. They're not really focusing on what his power, because he is the most powerful thing in the show.
If I have to make a reference to the Professor Xavier thing again one more time, I swear to God,
nobody wants that.
I already had to do it today on the couch. Like I don't want to do it.
In terms of physical, like how he could affect the story next episode, because the focus is really going to be Jon and Dany, Fire and Ice. Who sits the Iron Throne? As much as that the message is that it shouldn't really matter. That's what's going to be reconciled next episode. How is everybody going to react to Dany's change?
To me, Drogon's the biggest question mark. To me, the biggest like.
Okay, so you're saying Bran wargs into Drogon.
Well, I'm saying
to prevent him from like killing everybody.
Right. Maybe. I mean, that's what people are saying. Like, what else could he do? Like, that's the only other thing he could do. But Drogon's existence, him living at this time, at this last episode, with Dany being the overt villain at this time, is like how do you deal with that? I don't even know. How do you handle it other than using Bran? I guess. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, right. Where do you go? What else? Can you give me one idea? What happens to Drogon?
Well, I mean, dragons can be slain. It takes a lot.
We've seen 2 of them die. But
all the scorpions are gone.
Right.
That doesn't mean
John's not going to stab one. He's not going to stab Drogon with his fucking sword.
So maybe that doesn't work. I was thinking like maybe Drogon recognizes that Jon is the rightful heir.
No,
that's too much. That's too fairy tale.
Exactly, and that's like also like another lame turn right at the end. It's like, so Drogon probably has to die. I just don't know how.
Look, if Dany has to die, Drogon has to die. So does Grey Worm.
Yeah, they have to be tried for. I guess war crimes essentially,
genocide. Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to sentence Drogon to death for the actions of Dany, because she's really manipulating him at that point. But
I think So I think what you're gonna see, similar to in the Dance of the Dragons, in Westerosi history, this hasn't been featured on the show, but the common folk, they rioted and stormed the dragon pit and killed a bunch of dragons themselves. So that was at a time, it was a Targaryen civil war. There's a lot of dragons. So you can imagine people, after seeing what they just saw, what the dragon did to King's Landing, not wanting any dragons anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we said for since the beginning of the season, there will be no dragons at the end of the season.
Yeah.
That still likely will be the case. It's going to be sad to see Drogon die, and it's going to be in a very, upsetting way. I think ultimately it's not going to feel like triumphant at all, because again, these are people and characters that we have had held up as heroes for literally the entire series.
And look, that's the point. We've been promised this the whole time, that it's going to have a bittersweet ending. It'll be some good guys winning and other good guys, they're heroes that have fallen, the angels that fell from grace. It's not a pleasant thing to talk about.
I don't want to start this whole thing again. We're not going to talk about it. I just don't agree with that. Okay. We have 3 minutes left. We're gonna call it.
Yep.
Time of death, 10:57. Thank you to everyone who has supported us so far this season. We very much appreciate it. Look for something coming from us, Patreon people. Look for something coming from us in the next week or so, week to 2 weeks, about what will happen post Game of Thrones. So me and Dan have to brainstorm that a little bit, but we're gonna reach out to you because we want to get your input and
like what kind of things would you want to hear? What would you want to discuss or want to what
Right.
else to talk about?
So, I mean, Jason here says one more episode of Game of Thrones. That's it. It's hard to even.
So
it's
crazy.
hard to fathom.
It's actually crazy. Like, it's been a long road. I mean, obviously the podcast became a thing in the middle of this whole thing.
Not really. Season 3.
Yeah, it's right.
It's
in
like
the middle.
early.
But like we weren't around for the whole time. Either way, it's been a crazy trip, and I don't know. There's going to be spin-offs, but it's not going to feel the exact same.
No, I drove 100 kilometers an hour down a 50 zone today to get here in time to watch the show. I plead. Was it the 5th? I don't have to incriminate myself. Is that the one?
Pleading the 5th is silence, I believe. You just
Right. That's
choose
what you don't incriminate yourself.
Yeah.
So I did just say it, but like just
on
I'm not. We don't have the 5th Amendment here, so it doesn't really matter. But you can. I don't think you can arrest someone for speeding after the fact anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway,
I think you're safe. I don't think anyone's
you're right.
Gonna be
Also,
breaking down
the
doors
police
anytime
are like,
soon.
knock, knock, knock.
She's like a SWAT team through the windows.
But yeah, like what I'm trying to say by that is, what show, what event, Endgame is like that, to some degree. The end of Game of Thrones is like that. But what is that? What does that look like in this post-cable world? Like there's shows that I like, but I don't even tune into them very often. Like I like American Gods. I like it. I don't love it. I like it. But there's probably 4 episodes I haven't seen this season. So, like I'm not rushing home Sunday nights to watch that, right? Maybe The Mandalorian. Maybe, if we're lucky, it'll be half as good as what Game of Thrones is like. You know what I mean? So
just call me when Lord of the Rings is out, all right?
Oh man,
you're gonna hate.
I think you're gonna be so disappointed. I think you're gonna be ultimately even more disappointed than you have been in the execution of this show than you were. It's not gonna work. You're not gonna be. There's nothing in this world that will be happy unless the imagination of the things that you saw in your brain when you're reading that book are pulled from your mind and put on a television screen.
Okay, I mean, I understand that we're running late, but that what they're doing is not necessarily an adaptation from a book. It's its own story with hints from. It's like pieces of history from the books, but they're getting to tell their own story. So I mean, I am very excited about it because they have the opportunity to really nail it and hit it out of the park.
Maybe. Brian Smith. Is anyone else hoping for the camera to pull out and it's all imagination of a kid in a snow globe? No, Brian. No, we don't want that. If anyone's ever watched Star Trek Enterprise or Lost, but Star Trek Enterprise ends with the whole series was just a holodeck recreation of the events of Star Trek Enterprise. So that sucks.
What if it just ends and it's just a shot of like George Martin closing a book
like
by
and
a fireplace
and then writing a song of Ice and Fire? I mean, there's hints that the show will end with like maybe Sam closing a book and having written the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't. I think that's been done. I think like if you do that again, like you're not. This is no new territory. Yeah. You're like. That's how fucking Lord of the Rings ends. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, they were writing the Red Book of the West March the entire time.
So no. The answer is no. I mean, I get he's inspired. George R. R. Martin's inspired by Tolkien, but like, if that happens, it'll be more of a cumulative laugh by everyone in the world.
Yeah,
and just the biggest like wet fart by the entire show to do that. It just won't be sad. It's like get the hell out of here. No.
All right.
So sorry, Brian.
You just like attacked him.
No, just the idea. Brian, you're a great guy, and I think he was mostly joking about the snow globe thing.
Of course.
Unless you weren't, but like, okay. I think let's. It's not 11:57 anymore or 10:57 anymore. I'm gonna call it. Thank you, everyone, for stopping in today. We have one more live show at least.
We'll probably do another
after tomorrow, after next week's episode, and then after that, stay tuned for more news about what we're going to be doing. We might take a short break after this will be the end of season 8. We'll do some decompression episodes, and then there may be a short break, but probably like a week. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
We'll talk to you soon.